I officially hit a year of doing YouTube basically in December. So now I'm a year and a half in,
Okay.
and my initial sort of like kind of my initial plan with the videos, I accomplished all that and like did everything I wanted. It was kind of like I just needed to get it out there of all the things that I had figured out along the way of making comics. And it was things that were sort of just not obvious to me. And I just felt I had to get them out there. And I always just had this lingering inside of me to where it was just like, I just got to make YouTube videos. I should just throw it on YouTube and just tell people. Because I originally was like, I'm going to write a book, which eventually I did. That's now called like Indie Comic Empire, How to Make and Market Comics or whatever. But in the process before that, I was like, okay, but fairly quickly, even though in the grand scheme of YouTube, it's not like my channel took off and is like highly successful, but and from my viewpoint, it was like very steadily just every month up until this day. It's like I just gained about 50 to 100 new subscribers a month.
All right.
And of those new subscribers, probably 20% of them reach out to me personally if they have a project. And that turned into sort of like actually helping people out and then people reaching out and being like, well, eventually I'm wanting to make my comic. I want to come on your channel, and it sort of turned into this thing that it is now, to where I interview people like you and whatever. But now that I've done it, and I've been going through this, it's like I haven't hit this. There's no new revelation. It was kind of like from the get-go, I had so much that I was like learning and going through and all this stuff to bring out to people. Now I feel like I've said my piece about everything, and I'm actually learning more from other people than I feel like I'm giving to the audience, so to speak. And you're a perfect example of like now it's kind of like everybody that started watching the channel that has been watching me for about a year. It's almost like we're all now just on the same level. It's not like I was ever knew more or like further along in my career, or at least not by that much of a gap to where it made much of a difference. So now it feels more like just a legit podcast of friends of my community. Because
It
you can
feels
kind
like
of
an indie
separate.
comics empire, right? And I
Yeah,
I think it's important to note everything you're saying here because it's about learning from others, no matter where you're at in your journey. And we're only like 3 minutes in, and I'm already gonna go like spiritual on you. But
let's
like
go.
everyone in their own journey, the Hopi Indians used to believe that all realities are happening all at the same time, right? And that's also quantum physics. There's theories about that. So anything is possible, but what you make probable, you do it through your action. So I could sit around as I did for 30 years and say, I've got comic book ideas. But until I take the action of making comic books, the next step doesn't happen until you take the first step. And then you take the second step. Like when I reach out to you 6 months ago when my hair was much shorter, now it's more glorious. But like when I reach out to you then, it's like, hey, I got this stuff I'm starting. And now that stuff is growing larger and larger. But that only happens through action. And it's through the action of doing it. When you started your channel, I should write a book. I bought your book off Amazon. I think I got the first print.
Heck yeah.
So it's like, like that happens through your actions, thoughts, emotions, and actions. It's the holy trinity of life. So I think it's good that we all learn from each other because when I watch your channel, I learn from other creators. When I talk to my buddy Matt Campbell, who does Mythica, you should have him on the show because like he's had I think he's on issue 9 right now. So he's had, half a dozen successful Kickstarters. I learned from him. You can learn from anybody, no matter where they're at in their journey, and kind of grow from that. I'm wearing the shirt of Gabe El-Taib's comic that he did with Dean Cain, All American Lawman. Gabe's from Greeley, so he's a big Broncos fan. So he was a fan of mine before I was a fan of his work. Of course, he worked for DC, and now he does independent stuff. Worked on Yara, worked on Isom. He's the colorist for Eric July and the Rippaverse. So it's like I learned from Gabe. I'm gonna meet Eric when he's in town for the Denver Fan Expo over July 4th weekend. So it's like I'm gonna learn from Eric July, and he's the
Nice.
biggest independent comic creator that there is, you know? So it's like, I think all of us just continue to learn and grow and kind of exchange ideas. And then you can get ideas for what you want to do in terms of how to attack this business, because it's a great time to be creative. I think now more than ever, it is a fantastic time to have ideas, to have comic book ideas, movie ideas, novel ideas, whatever it is, go out and create.
I definitely agree. Yeah, I sort of see my bubble within this industry, or let's just say call 'em the indie comic empire squad within indie comics,
Okay.
as separate from kind of like what you're getting into of I see things in more of a grand spectrum of us within a portion of a larger thing called entertainment, and sort of separate from any of the political ideologies that break up this space, and separate from just specific people that are very into just the like the magical art of comic creation, and really more of like sorry, excuse me, the broader spectrum.
Yeah, get that water, get that bottle of water,
Yeah,
Gatorade,
Mike,
whatever.
I just cleaned this room. Sorry. So like there I as people can see, I used to have this like black background behind
Yeah,
me
uh-huh.
because everything behind me was just a scattered of all my books, and I finally cleaned it up, and I got my bookshelf all set up and the thing that used to be behind me anyway. And so now all the dust and cat hair, I thought it
I
was
thought it
gonna be
was
like
pine sol
perfectly
fumes.
nice, and I just like got a whiff of all the dust that I broke up in here because this is
Okay.
the first interview I like just cleaned up before I started this. I apologize. Now I forgot the rant I was going on, but it was basically I was gonna be like, I really see that the kind of angle that I'm going after is the we're all coming from different portions of life, and especially in the sense that the main thing that I feel like a lot of people are trying to do with comics is we uh, there the things that separate us, as far as some people are all about like we want to be comics first, and everything else comes second. I don't care about movies, I don't care about screenwriting, like that's secondary. Comics are number one. I'm here to make comic books. And then there's other people that start coming out from the outside that are like, I started out in other parts of entertainment. I wrote for TV, whatever, and now I'm trying to turn it into comics. And that's sort of where I came from. And I don't want to alienate the people on any of the directions, but not shun anyone out, and really show how this is a collaborative effort amongst all of us. And there's no reason to shun anybody as a part of it. It doesn't
Right.
matter if someone's trying to make whatever comic book that they're trying to make, if they're trying to get with Marvel and DC, even if they're trying to get with Marvel and DC and ruin it. That's still fine. Like you're still a part of the community. You can be trying
Right.
to push down whatever agenda you want. It's like we're still trying to create. The fact that the people are trying to create and really have an influence on the world, I don't see that as a bad thing. I see if we're all trying to do that, may the best one win. If
Right.
you have the more creative power to put an influence on people with whatever your agenda is, obviously I lean more towards let's be collaborative and helpful and put out positive messages to the universe or whatever, those of us. But nonetheless, if you're going for it and you're trying for it, I'm going to try to help you make it all the way through. Um, and that was just, I wanted to get that out there. I can't remember how we ended up on that tangent or what you
Well, it's the
said that
Indie
brought me
Comics
to it.
Empire Squad. I like us
Oh
having a
yeah,
nickname
that's
now.
now I remember because you're talking about other people that you were learning from and
Hmm.
all that, and that's what I was going to get at is me just getting and going on YouTube, and I think we talked about this last time, or I talk about it all the time now, is like just that act has changed everything for me in comics, when it comes to sort of my credibility and learning from other people, because even people that are not associated with comics, they come they are still involved. Either they're a reader and just an avid fan, and they're sort of intrigued by the idea of becoming involved in the comic industry, or they really are already deep into the comic industry and they see our avenue as sort of a new realm to where it's like they already write for comic books mainstream, but they're trying to lean more into the creator owned process. A perfect example was my interview with Sean Chen, who wrote for Marvel and DC back in the 90s, and he was came to me basically because he was interested in the creator owned world, especially the people that were going into the crowdfunding space.
Yeah.
And I just saw um, Charlie Stickney just posted on something Twitter today that basically, I can't remember exactly what it said, but the summary was Kickstarter and crowdfunding is now 1/3 of the comic book industry.
Wow. That's huge. That's
Yeah,
huge.
that's huge.
And
That
it's freedom for creators. And that's
yeah, yeah.
why when what you're saying, when people come with different angles, like it's all about the comics or I'm writing these as movies or whatever, I think all of us need to be open that things change. Things change and people will get interested. I know for my properties, my writing partner, Mark Torgove, co-wrote Garfield, which just came out in theaters over Memorial Day. And so now we're working on The Familiars, which is my animated feature. I know that you've seen that in PDF form. So it's like I was thinking of The Familiars like down the line because I'm working on Sue Immortal trade paperback right now. It's going to take me, I'll be done. Ty, my artist, Ty Henderson, shout out Ty, will be done October 31st with all of my art for a full trade paperback, 4 issue limited series collected into one trade paperback. So it's going to take me the whole year to do that. But in the meantime, now, because Mark is, getting more pitch meetings in Hollywood, which is where he's located, now I've got to accelerate my timeline for the familiars. So my business plan initially was get my superhero stuff out there, like Gravis, like Sue Immortal, and then I've got these other stuff like fake booze and stuff like that. Well, now the familiars, the animated kids thing, basically gets pushed to the forefront because it's got the most legs in Hollywood. And fake booze has some legs in Hollywood. So like now all of a sudden these projects are changing and I have to change with it. Even though I'm still working on Sue Immortal and we're working hard behind the scenes, I got Dan Kemp on as colorist, former Spawn colorist, former Amazing Spider-Man colorist. So I'm super excited for Dan's work, for y'all to see it. But it's like I have to change behind the scenes what I'm doing because I had a plan. It's all about comics until it's not. And then it's all about, okay, can these turn into pitches? Can these actually be optioned when I've got 8 ash cans out there? Like, can you option an ash can? Yeah, you can. I'm working on it right now.
See, that's the kind of things I learned from you. I never would have thought to like I do preach that like you need some form of product, and you did
Product.
that geniusly to where even though you didn't have a fully completed issue or trade paperback or anything, you had very solid, well put together pitches that turned into physical ash cans that you could give to people at conventions and stuff like that. And so if you could remind my audience who did not see our first interview, like how did you break into comics in and how did you get these connections with Hollywood screenwriters, and if you're willing to share your stuff with how you got connected with The Rock and all your other stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's I'm a talk show host in Denver. I'm a sports talk show host. So, I live in that world and basically back in the 90s, me and my best friend were going to work for Legend Comics, which was a Fort Collins company. They did one issue, Lords #1, and we were in Lords #2, 8-page anthology of a character called Freedom, who did not look like Thanos, although he totally looked like Thanos. Anyway, so they went out of business before issue 2 hit. So we were just like, we were teenagers at the time. We're like, we're done. It's over. But we kept talking about our comic book world. And so 20 years goes by, basically. It's 2014. Eric's diagnosed with cancer. And so, not to sound morbid, but I was like, I don't want him to die without our stuff ever seen print because we had talked for 20 years about these characters, right? So I self-published the comic and it's not great. But I self-published it. And as he was going through his surgeries, plural, and his chemotherapy, him and I worked on it together. I did the art, I did the lettering, I printed it, all that. But it really helped him in kind of a distraction from fighting cancer. You know what I mean? Today's cancer free, knock on wood. But that created the comic. And so, like, hey, yay, we got a comic. And this was 2015. So it was, I think, 4 years after that. One of my co hosts on the air was like, Cecil's a big nerd and he's got his own comic book. It was around the time of Denver Comic Con. And one of our listeners, who was Mark, who lives in Hollywood, who's written a movie with Ryan Reynolds, used to write for David Letterman, or written for George Lopez, like Hollywood to the core. He heard that and he ended up messaging me like, hey, I heard you had a comic, send it to me. And so I sent it to him and he's like, this is good. Let's make it a TV show. And I said, okay. Now, haven't sold anything. And pandemic hit. So that kind of delayed some things. But that got the ball rolling of like, oh my God, these ideas can be something. And crowdfunding, I think I was just getting introduced to that, let's say 2021, something like that. So I had some ideas and I had some prints of my artwork, and I had happened to get a great artist in Ty Henderson. Anyway, so I had a print of this fake booze and it was sitting on my table. I was at a comic book convention as a featured artist, and Mark Schlereth was there. Mark Schlereth is a coworker of mine and a dear friend. I got into radio 20 years ago because of Stink. Anyway, so he's comes up. He's there signing autographs because he's a three-time Super Bowl champion. And he comes up to my booth. He's like, "I didn't know you were into this." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What is this?" And I go, "Well, it's a story I wrote with The Rock and Kevin Hart in mind about a fake ghost busting business. It's basically Ghostbusters meets 21 Jump Street." And he goes, get me the comic and I'll get it to Dwayne. Remember, I didn't have this. I just had a print of the cover. So he says, give me the comic and I'll get it to Dwayne. So I officially shit my pants. And I was like, now that remember, change. You got to be changed, because my idea for fake booze was just like, nah, down the line. It became the top priority. Now there's only 5 copies of this in existence because I sent this to The Rock because Mark and The Rock are buddies. In fact, Dwayne, he can call him Dwayne, I can't. But anyway, so Dwayne wanted to be Mark when he grew up because, of course, Dwayne was a football player. So I had this cover made up. It's a foil cover,
Oh,
if you can tell. And
yeah,
obviously, I
yeah.
can't sell it because it's him. But this is what I used to, to give this to Stink. So Stink's got a copy. I've got a copy. Dwayne's got a copy. And so now we're getting some traction with that to hopefully pitch it to $7 Productions, which is his thing. So that started the ball rolling. So it's like all of a sudden, oh my God, I've got an avenue to that type of, super mega celebrity. So just kept writing, had all these ideas, just trimmed it down to 8. And so then we started what I call smokeandguncomics.com. It's the name of my truck that I had when I was 16. I drove it for a semester without a water pump, so it would smoke everywhere. So we just called it the Smoke and Gun. So I named it after my truck, which I love dearly. It's the logo of the company. You can see it right there. Anyway, so that's how that got started. And 8 IPs and 2 years to do 8 ash cans. Took me 2 years to get that done. Again, great artists in Ty Henderson. I've hired other cover artists around there. And so now, like, it's on to the full issues. And through watching your videos, I decided, okay, Sue Immortal, he'll be up first. And he will be a guy that I've got Sean Callahan on colors for some of my covers, by the way, from Scout Comics. So there's death support. So now it becomes because I watched your episode on like, all right, well, how should you put it together? And you said 5 issue or 4 issue limited series. So I was like, okay, I've got these great ideas. I'm gonna start putting them out in ash can form. So I have a product. I think it's Jake Parker that said, have a product, don't have a project. And so I went ahead and just did 8-page ash cans of the stories to get them out there. And that's Ghost Gun right there. Anyway, so got those all done. And now I'm doing like you said, like you told me. I didn't even know you back then, but you said on your video, like, do a 5-page limited series, do a four issue limited series. And then collect that in a trade paperback. So you actually have more products because you'll have single issues and then you'll have trade paperbacks. So in a 4 issue limited series, I'll have 5 products,
Yeah,
basically 4
yeah,
single
yeah.
issues in a trade paperback. And from then it's just like, okay, now we're open for business,
See, you,
making comics and then hopefully pitching and selling movies.
I almost want to use you. Like, if I had there in the example of there's a, in the independent filmmaking world, there's a guy that his channel is called Indie Film Hustle,
Okay.
and he he's basically the independent film version of me, or you could say I copied his style, but he's way more professional and he's been doing this for like 20 years. But the point I'm going to get at is he wrote a book and he used like these examples, and then the people that he has on his podcast that utilize the examples that he sort of preached in his videos and his books, he then showcases them as like case studies of how it worked in the real world, I guess. And like you are a perfect example of not necessarily saying like, oh, you took my advice, but it's like this is a perfect example of what you're doing and what you've done of almost everyone that reaches out to me that just has ideas in their head of how to just go about it one little step at a time and turn it into the ultimate dream that they're going for, which is like in your example, it's like the biggest thing you could ever ask for really is celebrities and sort of the backing of the machine in entertainment and film and comics in general to at least take a look at what you
Hmm.
have. You know, it's the same as just Marvel or DC editors saying, send me a pitch. You know, that's a huge, like, that's as far as you can get. It's like, if you get there, now it's just all you need is the talent or at least the pitch that proves the hook or whatever. And it's like, so how do you get to that step? Now, when it comes to what do you physically actually actively do, like the actions you take, like we were talking about at the beginning,
Right.
like it
Action.
comes from the idea in the ether. Now, how do you turn that idea of a story into an actual comic book or IP that could turn into something? The big example I want to use with you is just creating the ash cans because a lot of people don't have the funds to even start a full issue. Or if they do, they see it in color and they see it whatever. But you came up with brilliant hooks, classic sort of, you know, the kinds of high concept that especially Hollywood and really readers in general are looking for. And the
Hmm.
example of the familiars, uh, the log line of yours or the hook is just to me it's like that is one of the most genius ones I've heard recently of basically the Salem witchcraft trials from the perspective of
Of
dogs
the
and
pets.
cats as
Yep.
dogs represent or they are in the tribe of the witches and dogs are hunting them from the tribes of anyway, the point being is like that hook, and you just came up with the cover and the ash can, black and white, but you did those
Yep.
very professionally under your own label. You're not trying to immediately go after a publisher because what happens is people come to me and they're like, I want to pitch this idea to a publisher. And what I tell them is just do it all on your own first, but start small. One issue, an ash can, and you did
Hmm.
that perfectly. So your own brand, did the covers, market it. You even do the ads for other IP you've created in those ash cans. You can then crowdfund that, and you can and then you line all those up, and you already get the traction before you even have the book made. And now, like you said, you can now prioritize of which is the one that actually has the most potential or most draw
Yes.
or traction or whatever. And that's where you start progressing to, okay, issue one. And you know, it's like, okay, then to actually turn them into a real product that I
Hmm.
need at least a full trade. So it's like I'll condense it into a story or whatever. But yeah, the key thing is like those ash cans, like that wasn't even obvious to me at all getting started. And even like the example that I give to people in other videos of is I always say start with like a web comic as your first product. But now I think you're a good example of if you don't go the web comic route or like your own website, the ash cans under your brand is a great start.
Yes. Well, and you mentioned how people want to pitch to companies or whatever. Well, what's a better pitch than this? What's a
Yeah.
better pitch than your actual pitch and then say, here's a copy, you know? And I use local sales data at the comic book stores here in Denver where you can get my comics. I use that as sales data. Okay, which one sold the most? This sold out on first day. The first printing of this sold out in one day at Free Comic Book Day at Hall of Justice. First printing sold out. So I was like, oh, that's a thing. This is on its fourth printing for Sue Immortal. So that became the first trade paperback. So it was like, even though I love Death Support hasn't sold the way those other twos did. So I'm like, okay, that one's a little further back. This one's further up because of the connection and the possibility of getting on board with the Rocks company. Ghost Gun and Gun Disciplined are fantastic. Like, it's sales data, it's market research, and then it's actually just having the product and actually doing it because you create more possibilities. I'll go back, and the issues over there are buried in some comics, but like, I could show you the original Gravis comic that I sent to Mark in Hollywood that got him excited. It was terrible, but had I not done that, and Eric and I worked on that when he was going through chemotherapy. If I had not done that, then my buddy on the air, when he says, "Hey, Denver Comic Con's in town, Cecil's a big nerd," then he just says he loves Batman or something. And that never happens without action. Through the
Mm-hmm.
action of making an 8-page comic with my best friend who had cancer, that action created further opportunity. So again, to get all crunchy on everybody, and no, I'm not from Boulder, although I do live in the mountains of Colorado, like, action, take action. If you want to do it, do it. Don't talk about it. I talked about it from 1991 till now. Max, you
Yeah.
probably weren't even born in 91. Okay. Like,
Yeah, probably a lot of actually my audience tends to be older, actually, my age and
okay.
older. I don't
Okay.
have that many that are that young.
Well, I was around in the 90s trying to get it done as a teenager, working at 7-Eleven, getting when I have to explain newsstand comics to collectors because I buy collections. So here's how I fund my company besides just paying for it out of my pocket is I'll buy collections, I'll flip comics on eBay, whatever. Also, like, all these 8 ash cans are going to be in one trade paperback. I'm going to put that on Kickstarter probably in July. And so that'll help fund further projects. But anytime I buy a collection, somebody's like, "It's newsstand." I'm like, "It's 1982. Everything was newsstand. You got to get to the 90s at least before." When I was working at 7-Eleven in the 90s, like, it was all newsstand. ASM 361. I remember New Mutants 98 having 10 of those from like Walmart. And so, like, newsstand is a thing. So anyway, as an old comic book guy, I will say, don't make the mistake of my youth. And the mistake of my youth was I can't do it, or I can't, because Henry Ford said, whether you say you can or can't, you're right. So say you can, create the opportunity. I wake up every day and say, I'm writing comic books. I'm writing movies. I'm writing IPs. I'm creating things. And where they go is up to me in taking the steps necessary to create them and make them happen. I've hired you as an editor, right? Like, that doesn't happen. I don't even get to that point unless I start with these and say, you know what? I need some help. I need to sharpen these. I need to be the best so that when I get in front of somebody that is important, like, they're going to say, "What? This is edited great. The art's great. The cover's great." Like, that's how you do it. You keep chipping away at it until you make your dream come true.
And I will note that, yeah, I don't just like take on an editor role with anybody. If you hadn't had such professional, like even though you might only be 20% of the way in the grand scheme of what you're trying to do with these comics, it's like, to me, you just did that 20% so operationally well that it's like you're 80% along the way. It's like, to me, it's kind of like you've already got all the momentum going. It yeah, it's not like you were coming to me with a Word document with no images, just an outline of something, and you say, now
Right.
can you because that's most of what I get is people will send me a unedited document that's just almost, slightly unsolicited, of just like, hey, I've got this thing, can you, now almost like I'm almost treated like a sales agent or an agent for comic books kind of thing, to where people see me as the middleman between publishers in a way, which I don't
Right.
mind being. But the first thing is, I have to say, you need a product. Like, you can't pitch ideas to anybody. People need to see images. They need to see something fleshed out, and what your ash cans prove. we haven't explained here, but if we went page by page that people see is just by the cover alone, it is in itself not just a product, but an advertisement. It is exactly what studios are looking for in a pitch. Like the ash can itself is the equivalent to a a pitch document because the
Yes.
cover has the like the tagline on it, friends for afterlife, you know.
Yep.
It has and then inside it has a log line to the series, the first couple of pages of the series. And then after that is sort of a it builds credibility of understanding who the people reading it know who's involved, who's the artist, who's the writer, who's the colorist,
Hmm.
who does the letters, who's the editor, what else have they done? It's like you see all it's a preview. It's like a trailer to a movie, and that's not just an idea. That is just a glimpse of what is already in production. It's
Right.
it's much easier for that's how you get fundings for films in the same way. You need a something skin in the game, a talent attached, funding already set in place, so that the people that then try to get involved, they're just stepping onto a moving train, and
Hmm.
everybody wants to be on the train before it's going full blast and
Right.
they're making a bunch of return off their investment. That's exactly what people are looking for is they're trying to see something that is about to take off and they want to get on the train before it takes off. They don't want to
Right.
be on a stopped train, you know. They want to be on one that's moving and getting faster and faster, and they just want to ride that and be like, "Let me get my 10% just to give you whatever I'm giving you, whether
Hmm.
that's a deal down the line or whatever."
Well, and
Uh,
it's also having the credibility of having great creators on board. I'm incredibly proud to have you on board as an editor so that when people look inside the covers of the trade paperback, you'll be saying Max Hoban as editor. I'm super proud to have Dan Kemp, just having that name. I mean, he did the cover of Follow the Leader for Korn with Todd McFarlane. Like he was the colorist on that. He was the colorist on Spawn for 100 issues. He was the colorist on Amazing Spider-Man. And you have to have something like in the ash can, it also has like what else you got, right? Or what else you got
yeah, that's
section, which is
genius.
basically ads for the other ash cans that have the pitches basically and the story ideas for the other comics. And here's the thing, I've never shared this story before, Max, but I'll tell your audience now. So back when we first started this thing, before I had even hired Ty Henderson as my main artist, I'm buddies with Jay Leiston from Marvel, who's fantastic, fantastic inker. Death of Wolverine, like I think he's working on Avengers right now. Sorry, Jay, but like he's super, super busy. Super Marvel, did like Cross Gen back in the '90s. I think him and Dan Kemp worked together at Extreme back in the '90s with like Rob Liefeld and anything. So anyway, so him and Ryan Stegman have a group of artists that work kind of underneath them that are on the come up, right? So I just ask Jay because I'm like, okay, I can't afford you, but like, can some of these younger artists, can I work with them? He's like, yeah, send them your pitches. Well, because I didn't have my pitches in place, I sent one. Eric and I had picked an artist, and we're like, let's use this guy, let's pitch him. And so I pitched him, and he's like, no thanks. I think I have a project coming up. The project was Spider Punk. So he became, I think it's Oliver, he became mega huge on Spider Punk
Mm-hmm.
because he was on the come up, but because my pitch, not to say that he would have done my book and then whatever, but I'm just like, my pitch wasn't where it needed to be. So I remember feeling dejected, like, oh man, that guy that's on the come up just turned me down. Well, he turned me down because my pitch wasn't where it needed to be. I wasn't sharpened in what I do. So again, it's more of the I got this idea. That's great. What else you got? Like, you've got to have something pretty sharp so that when you have your opportunity, you can give people things or show people, present artists, present editors, because you did a video 3 months ago or whatever that's like, why you need an editor. And I watched the video and I was like, yep. And I immediately hit you up.
Oh
If,
yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
my pitch wasn't as good as it needed to be, you'd have been like, hey, thanks. Hey, keep working hard. Hey, whatever. Right. But the fact that I have you on board, I have Dan Kemp on board, Ty Henderson doing art, like having all these great cover artists like Matt Campbell, seriously get Matt Campbell on this show. But like,
Yeah, I will.
it's just fantastic for me to be have collaborative effort with great people that have great reputations and that have the attention of the comic book community. So that to me, that's the dream come true. And it's just continues, right? And it's a snowball effect. It doesn't start until you roll that first snowball. But pack it tight and get ready because when this stuff happens, you've got to be ready to change. I didn't think that fake booze would be fast tracked the way it's been. I didn't think the familiars would be fast tracked. Those happened. Sue Immortal was my bestseller, so that's obviously the first trade paperback. I got 8 of these and I got more ideas too that I curse at myself because I'm like, damn it, wait, get these done, and then you could do those other stuff. But like, yeah, go out and do it and get it done, and then you'll be surprised by what happens when you have things done.
Yeah, I do want to make note of that in sort of back to the more esoteric aspects of it of like, man, I say like too much, but the whole momentum aspect of all this is once you take that action, the momentum starts driving forward. And as long as you keep it going, you just do a little bit more, then the opportunities arrive and then they move too fast to where if you're not prepared, it will get away from you. And that is the importance of what you're doing is what else do you have? Because what happens is as soon as you step foot in this game, people will start paying attention. And if you have anything that is good at all, there will be people that they won't necessarily see that and say, this is what I'm looking for. They'll say, that's interesting. What else does that person do? And we
Right.
all do it ourselves. If you look up a comic book, you want to see what else did that person write? What else did that person, what other artwork has that person done? Where is this person at in their career? If you like a book, you then look up what else did that person do? It's the same. It's not always just gatekeepers versus whatever. It's all of us are in this together. And the best action I took was, and this is one of the notes I wanted to make earlier is if people are looking at your career and they go, oh, well, in the grand scheme, he is getting where he's at because he has a huge audience in his radio show. I had no audience, but I got on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube has one of the, if not the biggest audience in the world. Billions of people watch YouTube, and there is no gatekeeper. You just get on there and people watch. If you're making something that people are looking for, and that's all it is. Like I just put something up there and people started to notice, and that's how I ended up making a lot of the connections that I have now. Before YouTube, my action was just putting my comic online and then putting my writing the comic and sending it to people. The action I take is the person I wanted to see this, I sent it to them. And there is no gatekeeper anymore. There are some people, and now it's a very, very top percentage of people that only accept emails, or like you have to go through their agent or publicist or whatever to reach them. But we're not trying to reach that high of level celebrities. We're trying to go just a step below that. And those
Mm-hmm.
people are very easy to reach, easy to find their email, easy to find what other work they've done, easy to find them on Twitter or Instagram. And you don't have to DM them and do all this stuff. You just say hi, or in the Twitter threads. And there's really no excuse to not take action. But once you take that action, you now need to follow it up. You're now in the great game.
Yes.
You
You're in the
now need to
game.
have all your stories very quickly to be able to pitch them professionally, have multiple ones lined up because they might not let, most of the time, they will, the person that you're wanting to be involved in or collaborate with or whatever, they're not going to immediately like the first thing that you're doing or the thing that you're the most passionate about. They're going to find the talent in that, but go, but I'm looking for something different. And if you have those different options, now, now you just like hit a whole new level of territory, which you've now witnessed firsthand.
Well, and I've seen
Same
your
here.
channel grow and grow and grow because I'll say this, you'll never know who's listening. right? I
Mm-hmm.
have NFL owners that I'm friendly with now because they like my show on YouTube, by the way, which is odd because these are billionaires, right? So it's they're very humbling.
They
But
all
it's
watch
like you
YouTube.
never know who is listening. You never know who is watching. Again, I'll bring up Mark Torgrove. Hopefully, this picture shows up because that's my best friend and Mark and me with the copy of Gravis. Mark is right
Okay.
here. So
Yep.
there's Mark. He's the writer of Garfield that just came out Memorial Day. So like, and there's my best friend Big E. So it's like he was listening because he loves the Broncos. And now we're trying to get an animated movie done about the Salem witch trials told from the perspective of the animals and with a
Mm-hmm.
dog who thinks he's a cat, right? Like, so, like I've said, it's Harry Potter meets Fox and the Hound. So just that pitch line, those 8 pages now are getting movement. Now we need to sell it. We need more movement. I want it made into an animated feature. We're trying to pitch it as a Halloween movie. But what Mark told me about a month ago, he said, start thinking of the familiars too. And it blew my mind because I was like, I got one, but also they want franchises.
No, yeah.
They
Mm-hmm.
want something like, can we repeat it? If this works, we'll take a chance on it because it's a good pitch, right? If this works, what else can we do? What else can we do with this property? So, and those companies, Todd McFarlane always says this in his videos, and I won't do a Todd McFarlane impression like Rob Liefeld does because he does like a perfect Todd impression. But what Todd always says is they can't buy movie studios that don't have Batman or Spider-Man. They can't buy those, right? But they can buy your book,
Mm-hmm.
they can buy your IP, they can buy your property, and maybe you are sitting on the next Batman or Spider-Man, and they'll be looking for that. And they'll be looking to franchise things, sequels for things. Think of all the what is it, Minions, Despicable Me 4 coming out pretty soon, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was somebody's idea, and these little yellow things and like talking all this gibberish. Like now everybody knows what minions are. Like kids love minions. Despicable or not, it's what Inside Out 2 just came out. It's like a monster mega hit. That's a property, right? So you
Yeah.
have to think in those terms. And yeah, it requires magical thinking, but in addition to magical thinking, it requires action. Take the action, make the product, have the product in hand so that you can continue building your product. And the hard work doesn't stop, Max. It just changes in what you do and how you structure. You're still going to work hard. You're still going to grind even when you make it. I made it. I've been broadcaster for 20 years. Oh, you made it. I still hustle. I still hustle. It just doesn't stop. It just changes in what you
Yeah.
do.
And that's what we're learning now is Hollywood hustles too, or the
Mhm.
biggest players in the game have to pitch or have to transition as something I bring up all the time is sort of the law of numbers or this pyramid effect of the winner takes most of almost every industry, especially entertainment, especially with IP. Because if you think about it from the studio perspective, uh, Batman and uh, the the few IP are responsible for 90% of all their income. Now, if you look at that by numbers, it's like, okay, so my biggest property brings in $1 billion a year. So it's worth it to pay a bunch of different creators 10 grand, 100 grand, whatever here and there to take their IP. And just in case that becomes the $1 billion IP, because from their perspective, it's just a little blip, an investment that it doesn't matter if it goes to zero because if it wins big. And so they can take chances on a lot of things. And from us small timers, and the example of you saying the hustle just transitions is we might start out being like, I will take anything. Give me $1,000 for that idea. And then you reach that goal and you're like, well, now I want to keep my IP and I want to at least turn it into a big thing. And then that's where you see people, then you partner with somebody and you don't give them all the rights for a set thing. You give them partial rights for a limited amount of time and you can sell it over and over again and
Oh
everybody
yeah.
makes a little bit off of it and you start to learn these things with time, but you're always learning and readjusting, and then you see things from their perspective to where now you're looking at other people and other creators of who to collaborate with, because now you see it as an investment as well, of not just money, but time, and who has real talent and who's actually worth partnering with, because you'll benefit all in the long run. And you start to now see it as not just this, here's the gatekeepers with everything that just shun everybody out, or it's impossible to break in. It's like you start to see it as, actually it's not impossible. There are very obvious sets of motions, and here's why they work. And because the art of storytelling is everywhere, and it's drugs that we're all addicted to, and like you can just just play the game, just step in.
Hmm.
If we're going to sum up this whole discussion, it's just play the game, take action, take your first action. It's not that hard. And then see the big picture down the line, and just keep the ball rolling. And you're not, I mean, obviously it doesn't guarantee like grandiose success,
Hmm.
but I think from you and I, our personal relationship is, it does prove that sort of just us taking these little actions. We waited forever. I spent 10 years saying I'm going to be a film director or get into filmmaking and writing screenplays and getting into comics, and never did. Just, I didn't even think about the actual steps it requires. And then in 2016, I actually said, you know what? I'm going to figure out what it actually takes. And I'm not, and I started out just like everybody else. I thought you just write something, you submit to festivals, you submit to publishers, and then you wait and you just
Right.
hope for the best. Hope you maybe win, or hope an agent reaches out. And then I started to realize, watching YouTube videos like this, that even the people in the game, people that are successful, that movies that you've seen, comics that you read, they aren't in this separate world from us. They're in the same one. They are also watching YouTube videos, trying to
Yep.
figure out what are people into, how do you market things yourself, and you start to realize that we are in a new realm to where the independent creator has a more control over everything, and not just in entertainment and comics, but really kind of in the whole world. We have computers in our pockets. Like, there's so much about the era that we're living in that is giving us back control. To turn it into a more, once again, a more grandiose esoteric occult aspect to all this stuff, is there is a, I really do feel as if you and I are actually pushing like a big wave out to the universe that is actually having a direct impact. These videos reach somebody who it actually clicks in their head of the actions that they can take that make a difference. And it's not just, well, I used to just watch videos and listen all the time, and just and not actually do anything. Just listen to how people, listen to how The Rock became who he was, listen to how all these famous people basically became famous or broke in the industry. I heard over and over again the classic stories of Steven Spielberg and El Mariachi, and just thought that this was the way it was. And some of us just didn't have a chance or didn't have the talent. And now we're learning that yes, we do. And we're now in the era to where we can take advantage of that, as long as we just take the step. Just
Take
take
action.
what's your idea, write it down.
Yeah. Don't be a dick along the way. It's what I always tell people that want to get into radio or broadcasting. It's like, you'll be surprised on, who you run into it, where they're at in their path. Sports example, and maybe some of the audience won't know who this is, but like Matt Miller, who is the number 2 draft analyst at ESPN underneath Mel Kiper, and Matt will be the number 1 when Mel decides to retire. I showed Matt around his first Senior Bowl because I had been there for, half a dozen years or whatever. And I knew Matt was this young kid on the come up, and he was real smart, real good. And I just showed him around. We're fast friends. And now he's like a megastar, right? And I take no credit in his ascent, but you recognize that talent, and you see like, okay, this guy just needs a little guidance. He needed guidance around Mobile, Alabama. And I guided him, and he'll never forget that. And I still appreciate Matt to this day because he's a megastar in the sports space. And like, seeing that talent, seeing others with talent be able to do that, like, I think it's fantastic seeing other creators that have success with their IPs and their books. Like, we all should be doing this, but we all need to be taking action because it's the action that spurs the universe into opening more doors for us. Everything is possible, but what's probable is created by the steps that you take. You create more probabilities by your action.
Yeah. Yeah. If I were going to say something even more preachy in that you just proved, is that it really is, as cheesy as it sounds, it's not just giving, but just the act of, giving away your information, helping people, the outward direction. And my example of just showing people how I did this on YouTube, I got all kinds of stuff inward. And it's not all just taking, or you're not, that the point is we can ingest all this information and watch all these videos and read all these comics and even start to write things ourselves. But until you start to put them out in the world, that action is the magic. That is when you post the webcomic, you publish the ash can. It's a fine-tuned, crafted thing. You went through all the motions to make it. It went from your head to the physical world, and then you gave it away. Once you give it away and put it out in the world, to you, it may just seem like I just put it out there and we see what it is. But that action is what now allows people to receive it. And if it works, if your magic, your potions, if that story gives the effect of someone that reads it, because like back to the drugs thing, you're essentially putting cocaine out in the world and give it to someone to snort. And then they
Right.
snort it and they're like, it works. I'm high. I want more.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what you're doing with your stories.
And you got, at the end of the day, you got to be good.
Yeah,
You
it's
got
got
to
to
be
be good
good.
Coke.
And you, yeah, exactly. It can't be that the baking powder, soda baking powder,
Yeah.
whatever. Guess who's never done Coke? Anyway, so, humble brag. Hey guys, I don't do Coke. Anyway,
Hey,
like,
I'm not saying I do either. I'm just
like,
using
of
that
course,
as
of
an
course, he's an
exaggerated
expert
example.
at that Colombian stuff. But anyway, like for me, it's about opportunity. There is some timing involved because I know too many people in broadcasting that's like, I want it now. I want my show now. It's like, well, get in line because there's a bazillion of you. Like for me with these comics, it took me 2 years to do 8 ash cans. 2 years of my life. The full trade paperback for Two Immortals taking almost a full calendar year till October 31st is when Ty will be done with his art. Like, that's a long time. And to expect the results now, like, no, it's about building the steps,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rome wasn't built in a day, whatever you want to say. So I would also encourage young creators out there to just be patient, be good at what you do, don't be a dick, and then also just sharpen your craft as much as possible. As a storyteller, I want to sharpen my craft. I want it to be as good as it can be so that when someone sees it, they're going to know this is professional.
For sure. To add on top of that, and sort of to conclude, since we're reaching the hour, I will say that that is exactly what, whenever I decided I'm going to take this serious in 2016, um, I was kind of, I saw it as I knew that it would be a long time frame. And at that time I was 20, I was basically it turned 25, was about to turn 26. And I was thinking, you know, now I look at back and I'm like, I was really young, even though it wasn't that long ago. But I just thought of it as okay, whenever I was 18, I expected to do all this stuff whenever I was 19. Now I'm just going to say, all right, I'm starting now when I'm 25. By the time I'm 35, I just want to see some kind of tangible difference. I want to win a contest. I want to have a published book. I want to have a finished movie. But I'm going to give myself 10 years to sort of, in that time, I wasn't saying to reach the result, but just that's when I'll give up. Is I can't give up in 1 year. If I look back after 10 years and say, I don't really have anything to show for all this time that I've put into this stuff, then I can say, all right, I did that little thing and now I'm done. of course, I can't stop because I'm always writing stories. It's not just a hobby. This is
Right.
just how I am. But that's
Right.
in my mind. I was like, I will give myself 10 years to try to fine tune this craft and try to become a professional writer. Well, just doing that for 3, 4 years, all the goals that I expected to accomplish in 10 basically came true. And now I'm officially in whatever I'm at that. So that was 2016. It's now I'm almost at my 10 years. Um, so and I still consider myself very much a beginner in the grand scheme. But point being is see it as a long-term thing. Like you were noting, is it takes over a year to create a full trade, and that's sort of the fast route. Um, it can take, and it's way longer if when it comes to from the idea to the final issue of your series releasing, it could be 3 years. And the example
Hmm.
of Liquid Kill, that was one of the first scripts that I started writing in 2016. I didn't finalize the script until 2018. And then I didn't actually finalize the script that people are seeing today until 2021. And now it's 2024, and people are just now about to see the trade paperback of the first 4 issues. By the time they read the final issue of what I originally wrote in 2016, it's going to be 2026. It's going to be 10 years later. That's
Wow.
how long these things, it didn't have to take that long, but that was my most huge project. This is my Batman. The
Hmm.
ongoing multiple characters, um, to end on story that people always are most people that watch these videos, or my audience so to speak, are interested mostly in writing. They come across me as a writer, not as a YouTuber. And so they want to know more about like the creative process. Even though I'm all about the business and marketing behind the scenes, ultimately when they reach out or if they're watching the videos and stuff like that, they're wanting to know, well, what was your creative process and stuff like that. And so to give them a little bit of a whatever Easter egg for all that kind of stuff, I was gonna say like with Liquid Kill in particular, it took me years to write that thing. And it went through many, many drafts. It
Yeah.
wasn't just like the first vomit draft, so to speak, that I wrote, it was my second script that I had really tried to write professionally in the right formatting and all that stuff. So it took me over a year to write it. And then the second and third drafts, those together took me another year. And then, and collaborating with Aaron Crow, the co-writer. And then once we got the artists involved, we then did a whole nother draft. And now we're basically still writing in production kind of drafts, almost like
Hmm.
for film, it'd be like, this is the shooting script of, oh, hey, it would actually look better if we adjusted, this scene actually takes place here so that it's in this issue and stuff like that. So, once again, for those that are wondering about the creative process, it is tedious.
And it changes. You've mentioned multiple times in that story how the process had changed for you. And the
Oh
first
yeah.
draft is not the draft that people see. So be patient, be kind, know that you're appreciated. I sound like AJ from the Y Files, but like get it done. Go do it, man. It's the way to get it done.
That's right. I need a mascot that I talk to, like he talks to that fish or whatever, and just cuts into the videos and tells
You
me
want to talk about
whenever
a
I.
channel that blew up? Like they have like 4 million subscribers. Y Files is great.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I like that guy. I love his videos. I love the all of that kind of content. Even
Hmm.
people that aren't him, I dive into that stuff, and his take on all of it is really good.
Yeah.
And it is funny how that stuff is blowing up.
Hmm. Yep.
What final stuff do you want to note on? Do you want to send people to your any of your links, and do you want to say
Sure.
like officially where you're at on any kind of project? You don't have any Kickstarters live or anything, or you said you
Not
will
yet.
have one.
Hopefully in July I'll have a trade paperback. So we've put all the 8 ash cans together and I just got the cover approved. So this cover will be in color, and so like we're putting all 8 ash cans into one book, and so it'll be that's at least 64 pages. I'm going to have about 20 more pages of like behind the scenes art. So let's just say roughly about 85 pages of Smoke and Gun Comics. This is who we are. This is all of our IPs, and that'll help fund further what's happening right now behind the scenes is Sue Immortal, the full trade paperback 4 issue limited series, which will be done in October, hopefully kickstarted by Christmas. That's my plan. So that'll be full color. This ash can, this trade paperback will just be all the ash cans, so it's black and white, super easy to put together because all the work's already been done. So
Mm-hmm.
now I have another product in addition to 8 ash cans. I have one trade paperback with everything in it, and that'll be out on Kickstarter hopefully in July. In the meantime, everyone just check out smokinguncomics.com. That's smokin, no G, guncomics.com.
Gotcha. I will put all those links in the description. Anything else that you want as well. Thanks a lot for coming on, keeping me involved in your projects and spreading your wisdom, and we'll make it a regular thing. There's a few creators that I think are going to turn into repeat guests as we continue to go along.
You need your own theme since you're an empire. You need like your Imperial March. So
All
you
right,
walk
I'll
down the
get to
ramp.
working on it.
Yeah, you can't use the Star Wars one. You get dinged on that on YouTube. But like, yes, the Max Imperial March.
Hey, I can write music. I don't want people to look up. If they dive too deep into the interwebs, they'll find my old personalities in the musics I've written, but I'll do it now that you say it. I'll come up with a theme.